iPhone 11 has been out for quite a while now. It released in 2019 and has been one of the most popular iPhones Apple has ever released, despite quite a bit of criticism toward it. Now, I thought I'd help you decide if you should keep your iPhone 11 or if maybe you should pick one up in 2023. Apple no longer sells it new on their website, and as you can see here, they offer all the way back to the iPhone 12, but this year there's no iPhone 11. Now, you can buy this from Apple refurbished, or you can pick it up sometimes in third-party retailers, but I was able to find it online between $303 to $500. Apple does sell it on the Amazon website for around $500, but if you could pick it up for around $300, it may be worth it. Now, the design is something that some people either really like or they prefer the new squared-off design. And so iPhone 11 goes back to the curved edge design with aluminum frame or aluminium, depending on where you live. And of course, you have your power sleep wake button on the right with your SIM card tray, which is a big plus now that we don't have it in the United States on the newest phones. Of course, around the bottom, you still have Lightning, your speaker and microphone. And then on the other side, you have your volume buttons and your silent switch. Classic iPhone, nothing's really changed there for years. Nothing on the top, and of course glass front and back. And the glass is held up okay, it depends on who you ask at this point. So it has the rounded edges that many people like. It feels very comfortable in the hand if you're not using a case with it. And if you are using a case, of course, that's going to change some of the way that feels. Of course, it's fairly light, being that it's aluminum at 6.84 ounces or 194 grams. So it's very light compared to the 14 Pro Max, for example, with its stainless steel frame and different construction. But compared to the iPhone 14, they feel very, very similar. But either way, it's a very nice phone, and size-wise is going to be great for a lot of people. So it has Face ID and the wider Face ID sensor and a slightly larger size that many will find to be the perfect size. So the notch, I'm not sure you can see it here in this light, but the notch is definitely the larger notch, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, as many people don't notice it, especially if you have a darker wallpaper at the top like this. Now, the display is where the controversy lies. The display is an LCD display, or what Apple calls a liquid retina display. Many have said that it looks terrible, but I don't really agree with that. I think it looks pretty good. The only time you could maybe see some fuzzing is around the edges. At the time this released, around the time of the iPhone XR, I showed the display to many people that do video for a living and photos, and just showing them, not telling them about the display, they thought it looked fine. The only difference was it wasn't as bright as maybe the OLEDs, with the deepest blacks not being as dark since it doesn't shut off the pixels. But with this phone, you still have a pixel density over 300 pixels per inch, so the average user is not going to care. It's a 6.1-inch display, 1792 by 828 pixels at 326 pixels per inch, and it goes up to 625 nits of brightness. So it's not the brightest display out there, but it does support HDR and haptic touch. And if we go into our display settings here, you'll see we have True Tone if you want to use that. I typically turn it off as it changes the overall look of the display and I don't really care for it. But it does have all of those different features. And if we go into YouTube here, and you'll see in HDR, it looks pretty good. I'm at half brightness. You can watch HDR, and we have those settings here as well. So if you want to go up to 4K HDR, even though this is closer to a 720 to 1080p display, you have those options. So the display looks good for most people. It's nowhere near what we get with the 14 Pro Max, but the 14 Pro Max has something called PWM, where the LCD displays don't. Now, the 14 Pro Max really has a very minor version of PWM, above 39% brightness. It basically is DC dimming, so it doesn't flicker and won't bother most people. But the iPhone 11 doesn't even have to think about that because it controls dimming just by brightening the pixels or not, or the backlight. But with the iPhone 11 at 240 frames per second, it doesn't even have to think about that, as it's actually brightening it just by increasing the power on the backlight, making it brighter. So you don't see it flickering at all whatsoever. So it's really great as far as that goes and being easy on the eyes. This doesn't give any eye strain, looks good, and shouldn't have any issues there. One other area the iPhone 11 really excels is battery life. It has a 3,110 milliamp hour battery that offered 1 hour more battery life than the iPhone XR the previous year. And when it was released, it was only bested by the iPhone 11 Pro Max as far as battery life. Most found the iPhone 11 would easily get you through the day with battery to spare, and it has a similar battery to that of the latest iPhones. So it's not incredible, but it's getting most people about 11 hours of screen on time, sometimes a little less. It just depends on the version you're running. And this one I did not use full time throughout the years, but if we take a look at battery health, just because I know many will be curious, it's down to 98%, and it has 69 cycles to the battery itself, as you can see here with Coconut Battery. So this is just a third-party app that you can download through Safari or Chrome or wherever you want to. Look for it, you'll see it there. It's not in the App Store, but it does tell you the overall cycle count of the batteries, and I use it all the time. So that gives you an idea of what it's capable of. And like I said, it's a really great phone as far as battery, but you don't have MagSafe charging. You do have Qi wireless charging, and it will charge up to 50% in 30 minutes with a 20-watt adapter. So it's really great with battery overall. Now, speed-wise is pretty good. It's an A13 Bionic, and if we go into Geekbench here, you'll see we have about 4 gigs of RAM. So A13 Bionic, nice and fast. It's as fast as many other phones today and feels similar today, only it doesn't have ProMotion with the display. So it's not super smooth like the iPhone 14 Pros or 13 Pros. And when you scroll, it's still 60 Hertz, so it's smooth, but it's just not the same as the latest phones. But many people don't really care too much about that. Of course, we don't have the always-on display of the iPhone 14 Pro or the dynamic island, but we do have the notch. So that's something that if you really don't care about, this might be a good value for you. So if we go into an app such as maybe Minecraft, we'll just resume it here. You'll see it plays games just fine. And while I'm recording this video, the phone isn't even warm at all. So it's staying nice and cool. And for those of you concerned about that, we'll see here as we move forward, it's nice and smooth, playing at 60 frames per second. No issues here whatsoever. So if you want to play the latest games, you want to go into maybe Freeform. I don't think I've even opened it on this phone yet. So go into Freeform, create something within Freeform here, and of course you've got full usability of all the latest apps, just not the dynamic island. So it's really good as far as that part goes, and has a pretty good camera as well. Now of course they're not the latest cameras, but they are pretty good. The front camera is a 12 megapixel f2.2 camera, and it can record 4K 60 video. We don't have HDR like the latest phones, but many people don't necessarily want that. On the back, we have two 12 megapixel cameras like we have still with the iPhone 14 series. They're just a little different specs. So we have a 12 megapixel f1.8 wide and a 12 megapixel f2.4 ultra wide. They record up to 4K 60 video. And here's a few photos that I took with them. I think it looks great, and unless you're really blowing them up to maybe a full-size TV, 55 inches or larger, I don't think most people will tell the difference. If you took a photo with the iPhone 11 and you upload it to Instagram, or took even a video with this and put it on YouTube, I think most people would be quite happy with the overall quality. No, we don't have ProRes like we do on the Pro phones, but in general, it does a great job here. And if we spin this around, record a video quick, we'll just make sure we're in 4K and 4K 60. And here's video from the front-facing camera of the iPhone 11. So this gives you an idea of what it's capable of compared to the overhead camera that I have here recording the video in general. So this is the microphone. We're not using the microphone in front of me. It's straight from the camera of the iPhone 11. Let me know what you think of it in the comments below. And so that gives you an idea overall of what it's like, and I think it's a pretty good camera, especially if you just wanted to use it for YouTube. It would accomplish most of the things you want, except HDR. Now, reception is a little different these days, since now we have 5G in the latest phones. You've got, of course, your millimeter wave antennas. We don't have that with the iPhone 11. It supports 4G LTE, and it has an Intel modem inside. So in the past, these weren't that great, but the iPhone 11, for some reason, being that it's aluminum, seemed to be a little bit better than the stainless steel models in my overall tests. It doesn't have 5G, but you do have 4G, which uses less power, which in turn leads to better battery life. So you do have that going for it. So if you don't need the fastest speeds available, it's not going to matter to you too much, then this might be a good option for you. It also does have an IP rating of IP68, 2 meters for up to 30 minutes. It's not the 6 meters for 30 minutes of the latest phones, but that's fine these days. It will do the job, and Apple doesn't cover water damage anyway, so if you get water intrusion into the phone, you'll want to bring it into Apple, and they'll typically charge you if you don't have Apple Care, even if you have the latest phones. So I do recommend putting it in a waterproof case if you're going to bring it underwater. Now, if you are going to pick one of these up, make sure you get an unlocked version just to make sure you can use it around the world. Put in whatever SIM card you'd like. And as far as future iOS update versions, well, I would expect 2024, 2025 to be towards the end of life, meaning iOS 18, 19, or maybe even 20. Apple's gone up to 7 years before with their iOS updates, so you'll get these for many years to come. So if we go into the camera, you'll see it's nice and fast. It still supports all the latest features. If we go into music, wait for it to load, we'll tap Not Now. We had a little splash screen there. Everything feels smooth and fast for the most part. Of course, you're not going to have the fastest, but it's nice and fast with most tasks, whether that's recording video, editing video, playing games, or anything else. And so who is this for, and who should still buy an iPhone 11? If you already have an iPhone 11 and you don't care about the latest specs, the latest design, you prefer the curved design, and you really like the display because it's easy on your eyes, well, then stay with your iPhone 11 for a little while. If you're not a big fan of this, well, maybe Apple will release an iPhone SE, maybe 4th generation, to take the place of this later, maybe next year or this year. However, many people have said that's canceled. However, that form factor could replace this, bringing the latest chipsets. However, if you want the latest and greatest, well, you probably already have it with the iPhone 14 Pro Max or iPhone 13 Pro Max. These are all very good phones, but you're not really missing out on too many features that I would run out and buy the phone for. So I think it's a great phone for those that are looking for a budget phone that is around $300, maybe used or from a carrier free, things like that. Of course, these days you can get an iPhone 14 free oftentimes from different carriers, so that will really depend as well. If you have that option, of course, you may want to go that route. But in general, I think it's for most people that just want to get something that they don't have to worry about. If it gets damaged, it's not super expensive to replace. So I think this is a good option for a lot of people, despite all the criticism people gave it about the display. Let me know what you think about iPhone 11 in the comments below, if you're still using one, if you would still buy one, or if you think people shouldn't buy this. I'd still love to hear from you in the comments below. If you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, it will be linked in the description as it always is. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.